What is going on, everybody? Happy Monday, brand new week. Off to a good start. As I like this new announcement about President Trump's drug czar that was appointed, Sara. She has expressed in the past her support for medical cannabis related to cancer. I think this is a good thing. So we're going to dive into that with Anthony and Michael Bronstein, who's coming up just a little bit later on in our weekly Insider Edge segment as well. Looks like we could get some weed at theaters in New York. That'll be interesting to see. I think it's about time. And a lot of other things to talk about, including Curaleaf and their new beverage, and IIPR dealing with more defaults. So let's get in to today's show. Monday, brand new week. Good to see you, my friend. How are things?
It's close. How's it going?
I'm getting a call from Dublin, Ohio right now. I think I'll just ignore that for now. But how's things?
Time to do that. Good. It's a nice weekend.
Yeah,
absolutely nothing like I've done for the past 4 weeks. It's just hanging out at home with the baby.
Yeah. How long's the baby now? 23, 24 inches, you're saying, or something like that? It's a big baby.
She is roughly 24 inches and about 12 pounds.
12 pounds. Growing
she
fast.
Is in the 98th percentile on both metrics.
That's awesome. Congrats, my friend.
Hopefully she's somewhere between like a Ronda Rousey and a Cameron Brink. So we'll see.
Well, that's good stuff. Congrats again. Let's get into it. Into the wire here on a Monday. We'll start things off with New York. And interesting as we look at this, the cannabis market, as we know, has faced a lot of challenges, lawsuits, delays, enforcement issues. But now we're seeing signs of some real innovation. We talked about the $1 billion run rate last basically year with New York, and they're starting to turn things around. Now we could see a very bold move where state regulators are floating the idea of allowing marijuana sales and consumption at movie theaters. And to be honest with you, why not? If they're selling alcohol, they're selling wine. You want to talk a little bit about this? And I'm a big backer for this. And I think, like I said, it just seems like it's common knowledge to be adding this. And duly noted, too, not weed, as in smoking weed. We're talking beverages and edibles here.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great. New York is, I know they passed a bill a while ago for farmers markets, which is another great outlet to be buying cannabis. Cannabis is experiential. If cannabis is going to go mainstream, it should probably be in every outlet that you see alcohol. It's an analogous recreational substance. You go into most movie theaters today, there's full-blown bars. You can order wine directly to your seat in a lot of movie theaters. Edibles and drinks are a natural fit for movie theaters. Most people are consuming them before, not most, but people are consuming them before they go anyway. I think it would boost sales. I think it would be attractive. And I think it makes just common sense. You're not doing any sort of inhalables or via vapes or flour. So it's not going to be intrusive to the people around you. And who's not going to want to sip on a couple of cantrips in a movie theater while you're watching a movie? The only thing is you get into, I'm going to order a drink when I get to the movie theater, but it might take 45 minutes to hit me. A little bit of a push and pull there.
So even with one beverage, you're suggesting that if it takes 45 minutes, like I've never had a cannabis beverage before in my life, but at the end of the day, if you're having one, how are you feeling 45 minutes later if you have one? Is it a lot different from saying having one drink of alcohol?
I'm going to feel different than you feel. I'm going to feel different. The feeling that I feel is completely different than probably what you're going to feel,
right?
Than what someone else is going to feel. It's kind of like just basically trial and error. But a 5 milligram beverage is pretty docile. And then there's also 2 milligram beverages as well. Which they'll probably have, knowing if it's going to be recreational use and it's going to be available in a forum like a movie theater.
Well,
but like I said, this just makes more sense to where cannabis beverages are at sporting events, music festivals, movie theaters, music venues, which you're already seeing GTI. And I think Curaleaf also had an announcement with a venue to where they were the exclusive for their beverage lines. But this makes sense. This is where they fit into society.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll have an interesting impact on, I think, culture in general. You know, if you have that available in the state of New York, it'd be interesting. Do you think it has any ripple effect across the country and states that it is legalized if it does pass?
I think you're going to start to see this stuff sooner or later, regardless. If I'm sitting there drinking a cannabis seltzer, it's the same thing as me drinking a White Claw.
Yeah.
It's no harm, no foul. It's not intrusive to the people around me. It just happens to be a different molecule that affects you in a different way. It's all going to take shape with the normalization of cannabis.
Yeah.
It would be nice. I mean, obviously it has ripple effects that it would start somewhere like New York, which from my understanding are going to bring cannabis consumption lounges on sooner rather than later. But this is, it's no harm, no foul. It's just somebody wanting to have something that's a substitute to alcohol. And as long as low dose, let's say hemp beverages are legal and they fit the mold and the theater is licensed and using age gating,
Yeah.
I don't see any reason why this would be bad or people would be opposed to it.
Would there be any concerns about major movie theater corporations getting these licenses? Rates Gretchen.
They had THC drinks at the Panthers arena during the Stanley Cup Finals.
You're fine.
If you can have THC drinks at an experiential event like that, I'm assuming it's just adjusting your insurance rider, and just going through the motions and getting in line with what's going on.
Yep. All right, let's pivot now to topic number 2 in Curaleaf and a new energy drink launch. They just launched, it's called Select FormulaX. It's a 10 milligram THC plus 50 milligram caffeine energy drink. I'm seeing a few comments right now about the amount of sugar that's in this drink. So a couple of things before we get into that. It's colorful. It looks functional. It appears that they're targeting a younger audience with this. So is this kind of the Monster energy drink type audience they're going after with this angle? And is this a good branding move?
I think it's a great branding move. I actually love the branding with the Formula X and what they're doing with Select, with it being an energy drink. I talked about it this morning, and I think a lot of people misinterpreted what I was saying. I wouldn't drink it. I don't drink energy drinks. I don't eat sugar. That's just me. I'm being honest. Like, I'm not going to sit here and pull punches and be like, oh, it's great, I can't wait to try it. Fact of the matter is I wouldn't drink it. That doesn't mean that Boris hasn't done the research and seen in the data and with the amount of energy drink consumers, are they going to consume a THC caffeine hybrid? And is that going to work? If 21-year-old Anthony was going to Ultra and they were selling them there, like they had this weekend, Ultra Music Festival, I sure as hell would try one of them.
For sure.
I think there's going to be a lot of people that do buy these.
Gamers.
That being said, Adam Terry actually came out. Yeah, gamers too. Adam Terry from Cantrip actually came out and said that he pulled his energy drink due to concerns with insurance and distributors due to the THC caffeine hybrid. Don't know how much I would read into that. I'm assuming Boris did his homework, and also a company like Curaleaf has a lot more resources than a company like Cantrip. But great product. I think it's going to sell. Energy and THC, whether it's different forms of caffeine, coffee, espresso. People all the time like to say that they like to smoke a joint and drink a cup of coffee. I think it's going to work. And again, it's going to cater to a completely different crowd, being the energy drink crowd. And there's a reason why Red Bull, Monster, Celsius are so valuable. People drink energy drinks and people want that experience.
Well, I'm just typing in this right now. What's the total addressable market for energy drinks in America?
Monster is one of the best performing stocks in the last decade. Celsius is up there too. Celsius, the actual stock, has been on a tear. But like I said, I was being honest and just said that I would never drink it because I wouldn't. But that doesn't mean I think it's not a smart business idea, and I think it's a good product for Curaleaf to add to their portfolio. 23.41 billion in 2023. It's projected to grow a compound annual growth at 7.1% all the way till 2030. So I can understand why he's getting into it. Curious to see what kind of dent that he puts into this, because it's beverage. It's a very competitive industry, but it's hyper competitive. You walk into a C-store, not only do they sell all the energy drinks, they're all in their own branded fridges everywhere. That's expensive. That shelf space is expensive. You've got Bang, Celsius, Reign, C4, Red Bull. There's Monster, Rockstar. There's tons of energy drinks.
Prime's
got hyper. Prime does have energy. I forgot about that. But yeah, I mean, I think it's a good product. I think that with the Rocket Pop, and I forget the other flavor, it's probably going to appeal to consumers, and we'll see it on shelves sooner rather than later.
How many grams of sugar does Prime have? I'm just typing that in right now.
And again, the energy drink crowd.
Well, it says 0, but there's different forms of.
They probably have aspartame or stevia or something in them. But again, the energy drink crowd is not looking for the sugar content. No. They're not looking for things like different acids and different oils. They want an energy drink, and they're usually not the health conscious crowd. They're going to consume it, and that's going to generate revenue. And there's a lot more of those people out there than people that are health conscious.
These guys are pulling all-nighters, these gamers, and I see that everywhere, but I can understand why. Monster energy
but the problem is if you drink a THC infused energy drink at the same rate that you're drinking energy drinks,
The game gets interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. But I do think it's smart. And I think people are going to want those at music festivals,
I agree.
sporting events,
I agree.
different arenas. I would have liked to see minor cannabinoids put in there. CBD, THCV, CBG. I've gotten headaches from a lot of the beverages that I've tried, like the Senorita. It's just THC. It gives me a headache when I've drank them. Wana has CBD, THC, CBG, and the minor cannabinoids paired with the THC. And to me, it's a much better experience.
I go back to 2001. I was a bartender at this place called the Docks in Toronto. We had this concert, what you guys have in Miami, Ultra, but in Toronto, it was called Area 1. So I'm showing my age now, but it was like the likes of Carl Cox, Paul Oakenfold, Moby. They were all there playing. And the major sponsor at that time was Smirnoff Ice. And that is a sugar bomb. I can still feel my hangover 25 years later after drinking those. And that was a lot of sugar, to say the least. But giving comparison, Monster, it has 54 grams of sugar in a 16-ounce can. This has 46. And Coke and Pepsi, Coke's got 39. Pepsi's got 44. Mountain Dew's got 46. But again, it's not for me. It's not for you. But it's going to be definitely a huge audience. And I just said there's a $23 billion total addressable market in the U.S. So I can understand why. Hey, if you got branding, that's the number one thing to get it off the shelves. And if they've stepped in the right direction towards that, and some of the feedback we're getting here today that the branding is good, and according to you as well, then all the best to obviously Boris.
I'd be willing to bet 9 months down the road, it's probably their best selling SKU as far as their beverages go.
Yeah. All righty, let's now move to IIPR. Man, oh man, not some easy days for this company right now. They're undergoing some more defaults as they're now facing a major tenant shakeup. The company is currently in defaults from companies like PharmaCann, as we've talked about a lot of the last couple of weeks. Forefront, Gold Flora filed Chapter 11 bankruptcy last week. Tilt Holdings. I know you'd mentioned there's a few people that were put in a short position on IIPR because, let's face it, a lot of these agreements were put together 2, 3, 4 years ago when the industry was a lot differently. But what are we seeing now? What's the latest? And is this the right move and the necessary move to, press reset, or is this a big red flag for the sector?
Yeah, and it wasn't only people. I was short the stock as well. That I said. I took that off today. Down, I think it was down 12.5% intraday. So I'm not short it currently. I was waiting for some of this news. I was waiting for them to really get hit one day, and now I took it off. That being said, I mean, the problem is they're overexposed to PharmaCann. The Cannabis is 6% of their rent roll, which we don't know which way that's going to turn. The rest of the top 10 are fairly stable companies. You've got Ascend, Green Thumb, Curaleaf, TrueLeaf, Holistic, which is private, which don't really have much insight into, Cresco Labs, and then Parallel. The thing is they're overexposed. 16.5% of their rent is PharmaCann.
So what happened?
They've also got a couple of large air facilities that are to be determined. We know they have the $40 million commitment that they made to air with their indoor facility in the Florida market.
Yep.
And then you have Forefront, which we all knew this was going to happen sooner or later. Gold Floor as well. I mean, people were looking at the death spiral financing that took place a couple months back, and the writing was on the wall. Yeah. So, I mean, this isn't really surprising. I think that they're going to have to restructure their dividend and or drop it if they can't come to amended terms.
I agree.
But PharmaCann kind of set the precedent. The PharmaCann basically said, "Come at me, bro," and they altered their agreements, and they kind of conceded to a certain extent to PharmaCann. If I'm Green Thumb, Ascend, Curaleaf, and TrueLeaf, or those tier 1 tenants that are sitting in the PharmaCann or that are sitting in the IPR portfolio, and I want to renegotiate now, I have leverage. Even though from the base rent per square foot, they're considerably lower. PharmaCann's base rent on a square foot basis is $70 a foot. And just to put that in perspective, GTI's base rent per foot is $34.
Wow.
So, and the rest of them are in the 30s and 20s, with Holistic being 56, and then Cresco or Ascend being 49. But Ascend's maturities from a debt perspective are all the way out to 29. And we saw a pretty decent earnings print from Ascend. With the profits I made from taking the short off on IPR, I started buying Ascend and TrueLeaf today, actually.
Interesting. If you're an investor of IIPR, what do you think are 2 to 3 most important questions that you should be asking management if you're on an investor call with them?
How flexible are you going to be with your tenants moving forward, and what's the strategy to get people into these facilities? The problem is these facilities are grossly overvalued. I think the facility in New York for PharmaCann is marked to market like 140 million bucks. It's grossly overvalued. There's some other stuff in there as well. I'd be cautious, and obviously do your own due diligence.
For sure. This could be, I don't want to say red flag for the sector, but you can understand the importance and emergence of reform and how we need it now, because this could have a large domino effect, knowing that there's a lot of brick and mortar stores right now that have put together some deals that, like you said, we're going to see a lot of defaults, knowing that there was a lot of these agreements put together 3-4 years ago and the industry was completely different. And let's face it, 3-4 years ago, if you and I were sitting here saying that we still don't have rescheduling or anything towards banking, that would have probably got our attention in a hurry, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah. The thing is, though, and I'm just spitballing here, but this might create a leverage opportunity for those tenants that are performing well within the portfolio.
Good point.
To restructure to a certain point. And if they restructure and IPR gets kicked in the nuts, doesn't affect all of us. If anything, the companies that we're invested in are going to start getting better deals on their assets.
Yep. All right, that wraps up Into the Wire, and we're going to go into our next segment. But before we do that, let's kick things off. It's Insider's Edge, presented by the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp. Here we go. All right, it is Monday. You know what that time of the day is? It's the best time of the week. Let's welcome in Naughty by Nature, OPP, Mr. Michael Bronstein, president of Attach. Good to see you. Happy Monday. How are things, sir?
So there was a third week of references. It happened.
This is it.
Good to see you guys. That's it. I'm done.
Right. It's going to be a rolling joke. So prepare. We're going to change the music.
I wish I would have done a better band.
You know what? Next week, Orange is going to change the music for the Attached segment. Instead of that techno beat, it's going to be the actual OPP song.
We can't do that. We can't do that. We won't be able to monetize the video. But anyway, maybe it's just one of those things that every Monday we shouldn't worry about monetizing it. Great, Gretchen. Chad only has one joke. I know. I got to get some more material. Thanks, Gretchen. You know what? If you want to improve your life and grow up your self-esteem, there's always the positivity to hang out with Gretchen Gailey. She makes you feel so good all the time, right?
Definitely makes me feel more positive. It's good to see you.
Gretchen, I'm just razzing you. But listen, good to have you on. And some interesting news here today where President Donald Trump appointed a new drug czar, and it's Sara Carter. And a little bit about her. She's a former journalist. Another example, I would say, of more media professionals leaving the industry for a career in politics. But this appears actually to be a good sign for the cannabis industry, knowing that she's said in the past that medical marijuana is fantastic for the treatment for cancer patients. So I'll start with you, Michael. Is this announcement a win for the cannabis industry?
I think so, because there are a couple of things to this announcement. One is that being saying positive things about cannabis reform obviously is not disqualifying. Now, listen, saying things that are negative about cannabis reform is also not disqualifying for this administration, which means that the issue in and of itself is not something that is going to tank a nomination. And we've come a long way. I mean, this office has been led by anti-marijuana folks for quite some time. Okay. And most of the thing is that, look, medical marijuana is probably the most accepted form of marijuana in the public. There's something like 90% of people essentially agree with access to medical marijuana. And look, in scheduling reform, for the first time, really, the U.S. government recognized marijuana as medicine. And I think it's important. I mean, if you don't count the FDA process where that's happened. Yeah. But a widespread acknowledgement there. To me, it is positive. The other thing is that she also has had comments where, it's basically said that she doesn't have in a legal regulated setting, that she doesn't really have an issue with that. And I'll tell you something, law enforcement, to me, if that's messaging that I think law enforcement could get around to, because they don't have to be for marijuana use. They don't have to be for, they don't have to be policy advocates for legalization per se. But on enforcement, we don't have a problem with the legal market. The problem that we have with are drug cartels, okay, are gang-related activities, things like that. I think what's going on overseas, she's talked a lot about too. So those are things that I think are important. And I'm seeing a comment. I think it's right. I mean, Republicans, in terms of stealing the issue from Democrats, there are a lot of places where this has really become a bipartisan issue, but also we're seeing some Republicans really, and I wouldn't say this with this particular appointment, but certainly around the country, we're seeing folks take a line and understand the need for regulation better.
I think, as you guys have always said, whatever comes out of President Trump's mouth, there's always an agenda, a plan behind it all. And when I look at this right now, I think this is a good thing that she's up to speed on the illicit market. And also, Anthony has talked positively about cannabis being a fantastic choice for medical marijuana. But do you think this actually indirectly might push the narrative just a little bit quicker? And then when you look at the grand scheme of things, Anthony, there's a plan that Donald Trump has behind all this, or am I reading too much into this?
I do, and I think she can influence it. I don't think she can greatly influence it, or let's say take the football and run and score the damn touchdown that we need. But at the same time, there was an article in Zero Hedge this morning that was about Canadian banks siloing Chinese gangster money as well as cartel money that then makes its way back into the fentanyl trade that comes in the United States.
TD.
What's her main concern? What's her main concern? Cartels and Chinese gangs. What are you going to find at the epicenter of, let's say, THCA flower and the illicit market in the United States? For the most part, cartels and Chinese gangs. What helps in harm reduction? It's been proven that legalized marijuana, whether it's adult use or medical, helps in harm reduction for getting people off of opioids.
Yeah.
Their main concerns here are putting the lid on Chinese gangs, Mexican cartels, and harm reduction as it relates to fentanyl. Cannabis is a positive denominator in all of those scenarios. If they go after all of those initiatives and still leave cannabis out in the cold, then there are forces working against us that we just have no idea how powerful they are, and it's just not meant to be. But the way the cards are lining up, the way the people are lining up, it makes complete common sense to increase medical research in this country, legalize medical marijuana, and leave adult use cannabis to the states, because it's going to extinguish the foes that law enforcement is mainly going after right now and help with the number one public safety issue in this country, which are opioids and fentanyl.
Yeah. I'd also say federally, we haven't really seen that much distinction in the federal government and from officials usually, and I mean Democrats and Republicans, not just this administration, right? But up to this point, we haven't really seen people necessarily distinguish between the legal market, the state legal market, right? And the illicit market.
Yeah.
And that is actually, to me, really important. That's something as an industry that we've been talking about for quite some time, because there are two markets. All right. And if the more that the federal government acknowledges this divide, the quicker we're going to get at more sensible policy here. Because like one of the reasons why we have state legal markets is to get rid of the illicit market.
Yep.
And I think that what we're finding is getting rid of the illicit market is a really tough problem unless you have kind of airtight, regulations, laws that make sense, access to consumers of a certain, that are over 21, right? Where folks can have access to it. Because really what you're doing is you're driving down the demand of criminal organizations. You're driving down the demand of, illicit products. And like that gets to a whole line of policy, that gets to ridiculous taxation, that gets to whatever. And none of these things can happen in a vacuum. I mean, I remember reading articles after Colorado had legalized where people were talking about, what was going on with the illicit market. We've seen articles, I talked about much more even now. And like, look, nobody should be going to jail for legal cannabis purchases and sale, right? And people shouldn't have been put in jail to begin with on that stuff. But what you do need is you need some type of civil way to deal with a regulated, to deal with a regulated market and an unregulated market. And we're seeing this across the board because people are like, we are not going to stop doing what we're doing until someone tells us to stop doing what
I agree.
Correct. But that's the problem. We've also seen hemp banned. Let's say just use hemp anecdotally. We've seen hemp banned in a lot of states, but they have no plan for enforcement, let's say, outside of what we've seen with Operation Padlock in Manhattan. A lot of the other states, they're passing these bills, but there's no resources behind enforcement, which they then still proliferate.
Yeah.
I disagree. I think that there's been more. So I think under the surface on this, right? We saw letters in California that happened, right? We've seen attorneys general send letters also now in Missouri, Arizona, and Nebraska. And I think that the thing is generally those types of things go out. And what people don't understand is generally those types of things go out prior to the enforcement action that's being taken to notify folks that is what is going to happen. And remember, there's always lag time. And I agree with you that there hasn't been much enforcement, but there is always lag time between when something happens and when enforcement actually happens.
Yeah.
Okay. And it has to be assumed that folks are going to get, like, folks have to feel like that there's an issue for actually doing it. And I would say this, like, there's different levels of enforcement, right? There's sort of the enforcement that happened prior to legalization, which nobody wants to go back to.
Correct.
Right? There's enforcement that could be taxation enforcement, right? That's more along the civil lines, because there are a lot of folks that are really doing it. When you look at it, it's funny. I was at an anti-money laundering conference, as I so often go to, at the New York Federal Reserve a couple of years ago, right? And was invited really on the basis of the cannabis discussion that was going on. So it wasn't the Federal Reserve itself. There were enforcement officials. They had the meeting up there. It was it was a really interesting conference. And what law enforcement is saying about money laundering is they say behind every crime, right, really is a financial crime.
Yeah.
Okay. Because what they're getting at here, and I think that what they were talking about here in terms of regulatory enforcement and taxation is like, look, taxation enforcement is also a means for enforcement, right? There are other things that are a mean for enforcement, taking away, fining someone, right? Taking away their ability to do business on that, right? Those are the types of things that we would, I think, expect to see. Right. In a marketplace like this. And that would get things to slow. And over the last 2 weeks, look, there have been articles. We've seen this too, and we're hearing about this in the marketplace. That kind of certainly the synthetic THC market, which all of us spend a lot of time talking about, which it wouldn't surprise me if the new drug czar opined about as well. Okay, that we're gonna start. We're starting to see some level of activity around that. We're seeing in articles that people are saying, hey, this market is like not as big as we thought it was, and we're having much more of a problem because of things that states are doing on enforcement mechanisms. So, and that's taking a lot of time. I mean, the Farm Bill passed in 2018, and probably people started, engaging in the synthetic THC market, synthetic THC derivative market, say that 10 times fast.
You ready?
By 2020.
Yeah. Well, I do think this is a strategic pivot. I think what Donald Trump's trying to do, and I could be reading much into this, but you guys make some good points about the whole hemp saga that's going on right now. I asked the question, do you think a lot of Americans or enough Americans know what's going on? To me, it doesn't clearly like there isn't. But one thing that we learned last week when we were in Washington about the European market, they have a clear, definitive message right now, and it's about medical first. And that's where I feel like this is starting to gain more and more momentum in the US. And that's because there's a lot of Americans that have benefited from the usage of medical marijuana. And do you think that that's growing? And am I fair to assess that? Either one of you can answer that question.
So while I do agree with you, the difference is those markets, Germany, France, Italy, Switzerland, on day one, they had federal backing and federal guidelines, not an adversarial federal government, or not even adversarial federal government, an ambiguous federal government when it came to policy. And they started with medicinal marijuana that was patients first. They're taking a cautious, measured, data-driven approach versus we started with a medical approach. We still have medical that's thriving, but we have a full-blown adult use market that is not aligned with federal policy.
Correct.
And then we also have a completely legal market that arguably trumps the state-run market in hemp that is completely legal, unencumbered, and running rampant. So putting those back in the bottle and let's say going back to first principles of, hey, let's get the federal government on board. Let's go medical. Let's do patients first. The genie's way out of the bottle. I just don't even know from a policy perspective or even an enforcement perspective how you could possibly ever get that done.
I wouldn't confuse legality with availability, right? Like,
okay.
I think that if you're going to say that so say let's agree, all right, the Farm Bill legalized everything.
Yeah.
Right? Let's live in that universe for a second.
Okay.
Right? All right. Well, then, like, where does it say in the Food, Drugs, and Cosmetics Act that it's okay, right? You still can't add, right? So it's like, okay, decontrolled doesn't mean legal. Like, even if you believe all of that, it doesn't mean lawful. We're still operating in a gray area. Okay.
And I agree with you. I would have been frightened to order a quarter pound of flour offline years ago. Don't care now. It's THCA flour. I've got the whole riders and legal opinions from attorneys, and it's all boxed up nice and well with maybe it's a fake COA, but there's protections now. So I completely agree with you. I think that is actually the very good point. You can't conflate availability with legality.
Okay.
Because it's very, very available now. And it's a huge gray area that is completely lacking enforcement, which is implying to a lot of people that it is legal, truly legal in the eyes of the law.
Also, when you're making some of these products, they get hot, they go over the threshold.
Yeah.
Right? So then once they go over the threshold, it's like, oh, it's illegal. And then it's legal. See, the problem is under the law, it's like you have to have clean hands.
Correct.
Right? When you come into it. So it's like, that's something too. I mean, the point is like, it's a ridiculous enforcement line. All right.
Correct.
Everybody, it's a ridiculous enforcement line. Like, that's why we have to talk about that's why we have to talk about legalization. And what I do think though, is that, look, like this appointment, all right, it's an important distinction whenever you have someone in the administration drawing a line between the illicit market and state legal markets.
Yes.
Okay. And that person, they've done that before. Doesn't mean they're going to do it when they're in the job. I don't know. Right. But it does mean that they thought it. And anybody who says something good about medical marijuana, that's great. Right.
Yeah.
Like, all of us got into this because a lot of us, I certainly did, got into this because medical marijuana is really important to people.
Yes.
And
so if it's important to people, like, what are the conversations that you have on the state's level that indicates that, you know, Anthony talks about the genie being left, like it's out of the bottle. We can't put it back. You know, we've got a recreational program in place, but do you not still feel like this is a big win and a big PR move in the right direction for the Trump administration if they do announce rescheduling and they talk about the medical benefits? And I know there's the whole recreational side and there's all this stuff going on the side. I think we followed a little too closely as an industry because this is what we live and breathe every single day. But for the average American, do you not think from a narrative standpoint and an image standpoint, this is still a huge opportunity and win for the Trump administration, even if it only is rescheduling announced.
It is an unambiguous win for the Trump administration should they announce rescheduling. Yes. And we can all argue here whether we should have descheduling, which can't really happen in this process, right? But we want, okay, there are folks who say, okay, well, we could do it. But rescheduling is historic.
Huge.
Okay. And if they move, if rescheduling happens and the recommendation is followed to a Schedule 3 recommendation, the change that happens because of that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Right. And we're all hoping, and we're not just hoping, right? We are actively campaigning and trying to do this to make it so. And it is so widely popular. And what we've heard the president, like, think about it. The president would have to say, oh, wait, I switched my position on the campaign trail. Now I don't believe it should be X.
Right.
Does that sound like that's not, I think, likely?
No.
Okay. Because why? Right? Why would he change it? And it's so unpopular. Like, what he said was so popular. Why wouldn't you just do that?
So I do agree with you. But then at the same time, why would RFK go on Laura Ingraham and start talking about catastrophic things as it relates to cannabis and Sam talking points? I don't think Trump is going to do that. I think Trump wants to put the notch on his belt and be able to say, I legitimized cannabis in this country. I did something that the Democrats couldn't do. Trump win. America's going to lead the world in cannabinoid research. I do think he is egotistical enough to want to truly want to do that. It's a matter of when, to be completely honest.
Oh, and you brought
I don't think that Trump will ever use the word cannabinoid.
No, I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't think that. I mean, I think we're getting into, and someone was commenting earlier, it's like, how many people even know the difference between the general public between marijuana and hemp? And the answer is close to zero. Pretty
much.
Right. We can't even tell when people are having impacts and they show up at a poison control center. They don't know
what. That's the problem too.
I think at times we run a cannabis podcast and we're looking at this a little too closely. I think in the grand scheme of things, it's just like, if you play the card, you're talking about medical benefits, people dealing with cancer, military veterans, bam, athletes, that sort of thing. I think that's a huge, obviously, win for Trump and the eyes of many Americans. And then you add in the economic angle on top of that, something he's not going to announce publicly, but I'm sure in the next jobs reports, he's not going to say, hey, these came from the cannabis industry. But if there's 500,000 jobs he added to the economy, that's going to be a huge win as well. But one person that is trying to get in front of this right now is our good old friend Kevin Sabat over at SAM, who said, quote, as a mother of 6, Carter, I'm referring to, surely understands the issues of prevention and education. So he's definitely trying to get in front of this, but
that is common sense.
Okay.
You damn well can bet yourself that when my daughter is of age, she will be educated on the matter, and she will be I will be preventing her from consuming THC. Children, teenagers, if you want to educate them and you want to have drug prevention, there is nothing wrong with that. And that is going to have to happen for us to move the ball forward, whether we hit rescheduling, descheduling. If you want cannabis to become more available and more societally accepted, prevention and education are going to have to come with that.
Yep.
Also, the same way our parents taught us about alcohol, probably.
I was scared shitless of cannabis until I was a freshman in college. I thought it was like the devil. I didn't want to touch it. I thought it was going to ruin my life. In hindsight, I'm glad, because some of the studies with THC on affecting adolescent brains, there's data there. Teenagers and underage people should not be using cannabis, no matter what you want to say.
Irish,
and I do agree.
That's called being a good parent.
That's right.
But the thing is, too, is Kevin Sabat should not be quicker to put out a statement on the new drug czar than our industry.
Right. That's
like I said.
Look,
we talked about this
drug policy. Look, he is he is the guy on the other side. You know, he is the guy on the other side of this, right? That is their bread and butter. Like that is their bread and butter in that office, and like sort of what it is that what they do. So whether it's Kevin Sabet, Kevin Sabet, Kevin, I don't even know how to pronounce it. Sabet.
Sabet is nice.
Like him or not. Like him or not, you know
that's going to be a clip. He is definitely going to use that clip, guys.
Yeah,
that's going to get back to him.
Yeah. Hey, look,
I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
Like him or not, he definitely has a clear, definitive message as to what he's trying to basically get through to people, and that's, I think, what's missing right now in this cannabis space. Who's that face, and why are we not out there right away?
What voters voted for what we're talking about? I'd like to know that.
Right. Good point. Good point, Anthony. Please. All right, so. This appointment with Carter, wrapping it up here. Opportunity, a red flag, or both, Michael?
I think it's an opportunity.
All right.
Yeah. Michael said it best. She's educated on the matter. She has an opinion on the matter.
Yeah.
And we have data as per how she looks at medical cannabis. That is huge in of itself, because rescheduling and what we need to get done, we need somebody to understand fundamentally what medical cannabis means and what it does. And she's shown us that she understands that.
If a Democrat, say a Democrat had become president, right? Say Kamala Harris had become president. Yeah. I don't think that they would have appointed someone who would have been the head of head of that office, who would have been for marijuana legalization. Because that's not the type of appointment. That's not the type of appointment that it is.
Yeah. I
right?
agree with that.
So having someone say, hey, like, all right, you know, legal market, medical marijuana, right? That's as good as you're going to get there.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Yeah. I mean, that's fine.
And for all you haters out there, Marijuana Moment was actually the first one to cover it, which was a very positive thing for the administration.
Who is hating Marijuana Moment?
Tons of people out there, and I don't understand why, because Tom just says it like it is.
It goes.
I read it all the time.
I read it. It's the first website I go to every morning.
Yeah, well, we live in a day and age of people only want to hear and see what they want to hear and consume. That's just the reality. The Social Dilemma. Good little documentary for people to watch. That'll give you an eye opener.
That's why I'm here. This is what I want to hear.
Yeah.
I'm going to come up to and this is probably a bad joke too, but I just researched on ChatGPT. The number one song April 1st, 1993 was Hip Hop Hooray Ho by 90 by Nature.
I remember that one. That's actually a better.
What year?
1993.
Oh, okay.
That was a good year.
I was 6.
All right, sir. You yourself have a good week, but more importantly, thanks for giving us your insider's edge point of view on whether this is a red flag or opportunity. But I think the big takeaway here is that this is a good thing, and let's pay close attention to how things will materialize as we inch closer, hopefully, towards rescheduling. But I appreciate you checking in here today.
Thanks, guys. It was great to see you.
All right. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate your time. Always good catching up. Insider's Edge, presented by the American Trade Association for Cannabis and Hemp and their president, Michael Bronstein, who appears every Monday with us. So if you're new to the live stream, he comes on around the 4:15 mark and gives us all kinds of insider information that he's hearing on both the state and federal level related to the cannabis and hemp industry. But one thing I forgot to mention or ask to him as well. Go ahead.
Skip brings up a very good point. Mark Landers actually posted something last week that I reposted, and no one even paid attention to it. It was a great document from a physician that told you how you should be speaking to your physician about cannabis.
Interesting.
Point blank.
What were some of the things that grabbed your attention?
Read through it. I read through it very quickly last Thursday evening, I think, when he posted it. But it was a very informative document on how to talk to your doctor about cannabis.
Well, the big takeaway that we got last week in Europe as well with the doctors is just we need the proper trials, maybe more trials. I know there are trials going on, but with that actual hardcore data that backs up, I guess, their belief and trust, I guess, as viewing cannabis as a medicine, because a lot of the times when you're trying to get medical marijuana prescribed, it usually comes the recommendation of the patient versus the actual doctor itself, which is a problem, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, busy week we got coming up. Bina Goldenberg is going to be coming on. We don't know what day yet, but later this week from Organigram. Robert Varrell, CEO of MindMed. That'll be an interesting one, big one. Haven't had him on in a couple of years, but that is a big time player in the psychedelic space. So we're having him on. Psychedelic Market Minute segment coming up on Wednesday. And I'm trying to think if there's anybody else that we're at. Yeah, I'm going to reach out to the few people at Aurora Cannabis from their global affairs division within that company. We met somebody really interesting last week in Washington. So hopefully we'll have that person on Wednesday. Was there any other guests that we're working on for this week? I can't remember off the top of my head.
This week, no.
No.
Not that I can figure out off the top of my head.
Yeah. So we got two big CEOs coming up in back-to-back Wednesdays. This Wednesday, like I said, Robert Varrell from MindMed, and the following Wednesday, we're going to have Doug Drysdale from Cybin back on. So some interesting segments coming up on the psychedelic side. But in the meantime, I think that pretty much wraps up for today. We're around the 50-minute mark, but you enjoy the rest of your afternoon, and hopefully I'll see you eating some edibles and having some beverages in a theater near you in the state of New York. And hopefully that comes to fruition. But in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your day. And everybody, we'll see you back here Wednesday at 4. Make sure to scan that QR code, get all the latest information on the business and reform side and what we can expect next, including this week in the cannabis industry. Some people are starting to take a position feeling this could be the bottom. Is it? Find out, scan on that QR code, become a Baked In newsletter subscriber, delivered to your inbox weekdays, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Eastern time. AV, enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you back here Wednesday.
Thank you, guys.
Hey, everybody. Stay connected here. The latest Traded Black podcast. Another great episode under the belt. What'd y'all think? Do you like what we had to say? Please leave any comments below. And as usual, make sure to subscribe to our Baked In newsletter. Check us out on Apple and Spotify. And if you haven't done so already, make sure to smash that like button, leave some comments, as I said before, and subscribe to our channel because we wouldn't be here without you. Thanks again, everybody, for watching.